Hello. Today I'd like to speak about the Venus and Mars conjunction that is going to be happening in just a couple days. I should say that today is August 31st and of 2019, and this conjunction will be happening on the 4th degree of Virgo, and it is in just a couple of days. So I have actually recorded this before. I sat down on August 8th because it felt so important to me to get this recorded before Venus had her cazimi, or her conjunction with the sun. And I recorded it, but I was nervous and it just didn't feel right. So today feels right. We have the sun just about to move into Virgo, and today is actually the anniversary of the Great American Eclipse, which for me was remarkably powerful. So here we are. Now, I have to say, in what I would like to say today, first of all, usually when I get my astrological insights, I usually write them down. I'm a big believer in editing and revising and getting it perfect, because, little secret, I am a Virgo. So this is new to me. This is new to me, and maybe it's why I've recorded it more than once, because it means a lot to me to get it right. So I probably will misspeak and get something off or get something wrong, and I apologize. Well, I'm a tiny bit nervous, but I'll get through it. So mostly what I want to speak about is actually Venus. The conjunction with Mars is ever so important, but the queen of the sky is Venus. And I'll start with her. So Venus is how we symbolically see the divine feminine in astrology. Oh, there's a cat. He might make an appearance. In Western astrology, Venus is our great lady of the sky, and she's bright and beautiful, and she makes amazing transits through the sky, which are remarkable in their precision. So every 13 or every 8 years, Venus makes 13 orbits around the sun. Now, in those 13 orbits, she conjuncts with the sun 10 times. 5 times where she becomes a morning star, meaning she rises before the sun, and then 5 times when she becomes an evening star, meaning she rises after the sun. So the precise conjunctions with the sun that we have are in an exact star. So it's called the Venus star. And it is also related to the Fibonacci numbers, which I find absolutely poetic. It is God's poetry, and it is the numbers of growth. So it's 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. So Venus not only represents the sacred divine feminine that we see in the sky, but also the enfolding and growth and movement of life. So that's a beautiful place to start with the Venus star, because then on 8/13/2019, Venus as morning star conjuncted with the sun, and it's called a cazimi. And some people say that a cazimi means in the throne room of the king, and the king being the sun. So it was at the 21st degree of Leo. So, and it was the superior conjunction. And what that means is when Venus in her cycle moves around to the other side of the sun, so it goes Earth, Sun, Venus, that's called the superior conjunction. And then it's in no way superior to the morning star conjunction or the inferior conjunction. It just means that the sun is in between us. And in that conjunction, I like to look at that as a moment when Venus is in communion with the sun. And it's private because we're not able to see her, and she's as far away from us as she could possibly be. So when she's in that conjunction with the sun, she also is open to the light of the sun, but also the light of all the other stars. So to me, that means that it is a conjunction where she becomes informed with the light of the sun and the light of the cosmos. Um, and so when Venus does rise as an evening star, it is considered to be um, a, a Venus that is mature, and she's wise and empowered. And so we are in that moment because Venus did just conjoin with the sun. And she is born as an evening star in Leo. And now I should say about the sun. The sun, I believe, is light of God for this planet. Everything is made of light. We are all made of light, and life exists because of light. And so the sun is the giver of that. So the sun is the giver of life here on earth. And it is the light of God, because God is the bestower of light and creativity. I also believe that the sun is our consciousness, because wherever the sun is, that's where our consciousness is. So today, the sun being on the 28th degree of Leo, our consciousness is on the 28th degree of Leo, even though we have planets all over the place and they're making relationships for various other things. Our consciousness and awareness of the moment is where the sun is. So if you want to be present in the moment, it is the sun, the light of the divine, that brings you there. So, okay, I do have notes. I will say, because I've got so much I want to get it right. So, the Greeks called Venus' evening star Hesperus, and I like that. It's a special name for Hesper. I believe having to do with the sun. I'll have to look into that. So I feel like when she goes to the other side of the sun in the superior conjunction, she is enlightened. I like to imagine that she is in a temple garden on the other side of the sun, where she has privacy with the divine and the cosmos, and awareness is brought to her of greater things. And we're not privy to that yet, but she will bring that light to us as evening star, and that is coming. So Leo, where we are now and where Venus conjuncted the sun, it rules the heart. Leo is the sign of the heart, and the sign of it's fixed fire. So it's fire that lasts, that burns, that's steady. It's a reliable passion. and Leo does rule passion and creativity, children and joy, and the radiance of our own hearts. These are things that Leo rules. So Venus, born as an evening star in this sign, she will embody this for us. We will have a queen of heaven that is not only wise and enlightened, but full of joy and heart and love. It is a joyful heart. So right after her conjunction with the sun, we had the Aquarius full moon. And I find that beautiful as well, because the moon reflects the story of all the light. And when the moon is, when we have a full moon, it is reflecting fully the light of the sun. And that light of the sun contains the light of Venus too. So what was broadcasted across the planet in this Aquarius full moon was a message about this Venus conjunction, that it was a spreading of the light of Leo and of the divine feminine. So interestingly, before this full moon and during we had eclipses this summer, we had a Mercury retrograde, where Mercury went from Leo to Cancer, and then back again. So I'm going to need to explain a lot about retrogrades and a lot about retrograde shadows. So the retrograde shadow is what happens when a planet is in retrograde. It does not actually go backwards in the sky. Retrogrades are all about perception. What it is when a planet is closest to the Earth, it appears, if you were a sky gazer, you would notice that a planet would look like it was going backwards through the sky. It is not. It is perception. So the shadow period of a retrograde is when the planet, it's the degrees that the planet appears to be going back over and then over again. So the shadow are those degrees in advance of the retrograde that will be revisited when the retrograde happens, and then it is those degrees that are revisited a third time. So so when we say something is a planet is in its retrograde shadow or cleared its shadow, it simply means that it is in that revisiting phase where a lot of the intense energy, because when a planet is retrograde, it is closest to the Earth. So there is an intensity of that planet. So it is when we not only get the intensity of the energies of a planet over certain degrees, but we also get 3 passes, 3 chances, 3 visits for those energies. So this Mercury retrograde that we had this summer, Mercury did go all the way back to the solstice point in his Mercury can be male and female, to the solstice point and then to the eclipse point. And that is very significant because the eclipses that we had this summer were very powerful in Cancer and Capricorn, with Pluto and Saturn in very near conjunction on the south node, and then Venus for the lunar eclipse on the north node. So we had a lot of energy with Mercury, who is the messenger of the gods, revisiting all the way to the summer solstice, and then a lot of energy back to the eclipse points. So I find it beautiful that that right during that full moon, the shadow, the intensity of the energies that we experienced with the Mercury retrograde was over. So, because Mercury does play a part in this story that I'm telling. So, so I did speak a moment ago about the fact that Venus was on the north node during the lunar eclipse. Now, a little about eclipses. I don't want to make this too long. The eclipses happen because of the north and south nodes of the moon. When the moon is in its north node, it is in its orbit around our planet at its highest place, and the south node is when it's at its lowest place. Symbolically and metaphorically in astrology, the nodes are destiny. They are personal destiny, they are collective destiny, and they are lines of karma and incarnation. So planets on the south node, that is a point of previous mastery. It's a place where the soul has experienced something quite fully and has absorbed it and is a master in it. So we had Saturn and Pluto there on the south node, and it is a place of release and healing. It's not something to necessarily let go of, because if you've mastered something, you should keep those skills. The north node is a longing for what the soul desires to reach for and achieve. So if you had Venus on your own personal north node, Venus was the divine feminine, the sacred feminine would be kind of an aspiration for your soul for your lifetime. Well, collectively, we had Venus as a morning star before her conjunction with the sun on the north node of the eclipses. So the release that we will have of Pluto and Saturn on the south node, I feel like Venus, our embodiment of the goddess, is offering a hand to help us in these transformations that we're going through, and the transformation that she is going through. Okay, so now interestingly, Venus and Mercury, the last time they had met, because they did meet each other on the 26th degree of Cancer on July 24th. The time that they had previously met each other was during Venus's retrograde, and it was actually 1 week after Venus's conjunction with the sun. Now, Mercury stays very close to the sun. It loves to be in the light. Mercury is, in mythology, the Hermes or Mercury, the messenger of the gods. So, and since I personally believe that the divine's light is bestowed on us through the sun, Mercury translates those messages. So when Mercury meets with planets, and the sun, I believe messages are exchanged. So the last time Venus and Mercury had a conversation was right after Venus was reborn in her cazimi with the sun during her retrograde last October, 1 week afterwards. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about is Venus's retrograde. So it is significant that their next conversation between Mercury and Venus was right before she meets the sun again. I almost feel like Mercury was whispering in her ear a few secrets and saying, here's what you're going to speak of with the light, with the sun. So that is absolutely beautiful, and I think a little foreshadowing. So that cycle of Mercury and Venus is complete now. What they talked about in October, they have a new conversation. So a lot of people have fear about retrogrades, and I am not going to say that retrogrades are always gentle and kind, because they are moments of change. And so I think a lot about retrogrades are about consciousness, because as I said before, it is perception. It is perception that a planet is backing over or passing over things 3 times. It is how we see things. So I believe that retrogrades are moments of changes in consciousness. I also there's so much fear, because if you were an ancient person and watching the sky, and perhaps they knew more than we think they did, but it would have appeared a little unsettling to see something moving against the flow of the sky, because everything flows in one direction. So I think we have collectively a fear of retrogrades, and I hope we can change this and start to use retrogrades as a chance for great healing, because that's actually what I believe that they are. With that intense energy of the planet and the intensity of time that is spent of planets moving back and forth in those degrees, it is a chance to really go within. I've always been fascinated that the symbol for a retrograde is RX when you look at it in a chart. And I did a little research, because that is our symbol for prescriptions and medicine. We use an RX. And so, of course, obviously, a retrograde is medicine. And I did a little research on the source of the symbol. And it is originally sourced from the Eye of Horus. And so it would be definitely worth looking online to see what the Eye of Horus looks like. And in ancient times, the eye of Horus was magic and healing. And I also really love that indigenous peoples use the word medicine to mean magic. So I believe we have a chance in a retrograde for timelessness because we are in an in-between time. And everybody knows about magic. In between times is where the magic happens. So it's a chance to retrieve something, so to go back and find something and maybe find the medicine and maybe find the magic. But retrogrades can be a time to really absorb the medicine that we are being offered. So I will be speaking a lot about retrogrades in here, even though Venus is currently not, but we have a lot of planets in retrograde at the moment. So that brings me to the Mars retrograde. So we're going back to 2018 now. Now, the Mars retrograde was very special, and I intend on making a video just to speak about the Mars retrograde because I think it has huge collective implications. Actually, I need to pause this for one moment. One moment. Let's see. Okay, sorry about that.
Hello. Today I'd like.
Oh, I don't know if I can edit that. I was recording just my voice on my phone and it just replayed because I don't know. I'm not very good at technology, so I'm really worried that I might not be recording this or I might be recording it wrong. So as a backup, I am also recording it on my phone. Okay, there we go. I don't know if I can even edit that out. Okay, so sorry about that. So I wanted to speak about the Mars retrograde because Mars went retrograde from Capricorn to Aquarius. And this is very rare. Mars has an elliptical orbit around the sun. And so sometimes Mars goes really fast and long, and sometimes Mars goes really short. And so there are points in the ecliptic that he doesn't spend time retrograding because of the oval of his orbit. So Aquarius is one of those signs that very rarely has a retrograde. In my own lifetime, it's only been I think twice, not much. So I find that very significant, especially considering the age that we're in, as we are, I believe strongly, transitioning from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. Also, we had eclipses happening with the nodes of the moon in Aquarius and Leo. So that intense energy of Mars represents our sacred masculine, both collectively and within. Mars is also the lover of Venus. And so they weren't married, actually, in astrology, or in mythology. They were actually lovers. Venus was actually married to Hephaestus, or Venus, or Aphrodite, I'm sorry, or Vulcan, if you're speaking of Roman versus Greek mythology. And Venus and Mars were lovers. And so she was the lover of her heart. Little sidetrack. So yes, so Mars is considered to be the warrior planet. I believe Mars is also the activator. It is the go, it's the passion, it's the drive that makes things happen. So having that intense energy of Mars in Aquarius back to Capricorn, and it was really significant. So the dates of the retrograde were June 27th through August 28th. Now that is important, August 28th, 2018. That was when the retrograde ended. So it was 9 degrees Aquarius to 28 degrees Capricorn. So So we had Mars traveling with the South Node. As I said before, the South Node is a place of mastery and release, a place where we have accomplished much and need to yearn for something new. So collectively, I feel that that masculine energy was giving us lessons about what is time to let go. Interesting. As today is the anniversary of the Great American Eclipse, we had Mars on the South Node during the Great American Eclipse. Absolutely amazing. So I find that beautiful. So, oh wait, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Oh, I hope I can edit this. I knew I was going to misspeak. What I meant to say, not during the Great American Eclipse. Although it might have been. No, couldn't have been possible. Sorry, I'm thinking. I should have had a chart up. What I meant to say, the last Mars-Sun conjunction was 4 degrees of Leo. And so it's been quite a while since they were conjoined. So it's beautiful. We have Venus born as evening star in Leo, and the last Sun and Mars conjunction was also in Leo. I think this resonance between the two, it's like they're both carrying the messages of the Sun and carrying the messages of Leo, who is ruled by the Sun. So I'm sorry about that little mess up right there. So Mars stationed direct for his retrograde on August 28th, 2018, and the Sun was at 5 degrees of Virgo when this happened. This is important as well. Of course, Mars will have a shadow that from the retrograde to be cleared from last year after that, but it's very, very significant that the retrograde ended on August 28th, 2018 at 5 degrees Virgo. Beautiful, beautiful, the timing of everything. So right after that happened, Venus entered her shadow of her retrograde on September 2nd at 10 degrees Virgo. So the way I see this is that the two planets who, for us, the Earth is in between Venus and Mars. And I often think that that might be why we look at them as lovers, because we are between the two. We had Mars finish his retrograde and spend some time revisiting those degrees, and Venus begin the shadow of her retrograde. Her magic, her retrieval, his magic, his retrieval. So I feel like they were holding space for each other then, and that their retrogrades were connected. They were connected in Virgo. So now I think it is time to talk about Venus's retrograde. Okay, I have to give a little personal disclaimer here. I am a Virgo, and I'm a Virgo Sun and a Virgo Mercury, so I am a Virgo. Also, my natal Venus was exact. I mean, I am talking 0.03 degrees off of the Venus retrograde. For me, this retrograde was extremely personal and extremely potent, and I might share it some, and I might not, and maybe I'll share it in future videos. But if I didn't believe in astrology before, which I did, I certainly believe in it now, because it was probably the most transformational time of my whole life. So the Venus retrograde, I've spent a lot of time thinking it and feeling it. The retrograde was connected with the great star Spica, and that's my star. That is the star of my heart. I am devoted to Spica. So Spica sits in the constellation of Virgo at 23.5 degrees. It's actually in the sign of Libra, but that's a whole nother conversation. Virgo is a huge, huge constellation. And Spica is the brightest star in the constellation of Virgo. Spica is the sheaf of wheat, called wheat by some, that Virgo holds in her hand. So it is a bright blue star representing wheat or perhaps other things. I'll get to that as well. So, so when Venus met with Spica, it was right before she entered the shadow of her retrograde. And it was on August 31st, 2018. And the sun, this is also important, the sun was at the 8th degree of Virgo when this happened. Now, I said earlier that where the sun is where our consciousness is. So it is very, very important that we had all of these energies about the Venus retrograde happening in Virgo. So Spica is considered to be the most fortunate star in the sky. It's the star with the most blessing. And yeah, I'm just thinking about Spica. So it's a binary star. So what Spica actually is two stars. There are two stars which are in a binary motion with each other. And I actually think that our star, and many scientists also feel this, our star is in a binary motion with Sirius. So it's like soulmates. And so I think Spica is a soulmate star. It's a star of completion and union. In ancient times, ancient people believed that Spica was a star that bestowed the gifts of the high priest and the high priestess, especially in goddess religions. It's significant that it is in the sign of Virgo, because Virgo, by some traditions, like the shamanic astrology school, mystery school, they call Virgo the sign of the virgin priestess. So I feel very much like Virgo and Spica in her hand are a sign of devotion to the sacred and a lifetime of devotion to the sacred. And so Venus has an affinity with Spica, not only in medieval and ancient astrology do they call Spica a star that had the nature of Venus and Mercury. In ancient times, Spica would stand in for Venus when Venus was not visible. And in fact, this leads to something really, really fascinating. There was a temple to Hathor in Egypt, and there was I believe it was an altar, but it might have been a window that was set up to honor the rise of Spica on the horizon. There was an astronomer in ancient Greece. I believe his name was Hipparchus, or we'll just say Hipparchus, who actually put together for the Western world the whole motion of the precession of the equinoxes because of Spica, because he noticed that this temple and this altar, Spica was not rising where the altar was placed. So she gave information on the wobble of our earth and the motion of our sky and the great year, which is really significant. So I feel that's really important too with Spica. She has brought our attention to larger cycles and greater movements. So now Virgo, the sign of Virgo, has been called many things, but almost always referred to as a feminine energy. Virgo, the Virgin. Well, I should say one thing really quick. In astrology, there are 12 signs, but there are actually 6 energies with 2 polarities. So Virgo and Pisces are ever and always intertwined as 2 energies that make a whole. So we are living in the age of Pisces. But we are also living in the age of Virgo, because I think of it as a south node, that Virgo and Pisces will always be connected. So the age of Pisces is when the sun rises on the spring equinox in the sign of Pisces, but that's always connected to the sign of Virgo. And clearly, you can see with our with Christianity that we have Pisces, the sign of the fish, and we have Virgo being the sign of the great mother that gives birth to the divine child. So they're ever connected. And so Virgo has been associated very much with the Virgin Mary. She's been associated with many great mothers and daughters too. The Greeks associated the constellation of Virgo with Persephone and her mother Demeter. So also you could say that was Ceres. Also, she's been associated with the Archangel Gabriel, and that perhaps in her hand, instead of a sheaf of wheat, or her, Gabriel, I suppose, is a male figure, instead of a sheaf of wheat, it is the lily given to Mary to announce that she would be bearing the divine child. So we've also got the goddess Astraea from the golden age of Greece, who was a goddess of justice, and she was the last of the gods to leave the earth as humanity entered a darker age. And there's actually a legendary promise that Astraea will return to earth to restore justice and balance in a time of a new golden age. And I really love that. So Astraea has been associated with Virgo as well. So we also have the goddess Maat Maat from Egypt that has been associated with Virgo. And I think this is where I'm going to give my personal opinion and story about this. So the goddess Maat was the goddess who held the feather when the soul passed, and the feather that weighed the soul in the scales in the afterlife. So it's interesting. We have Virgo, Maat, Libra, scales, and then we have a constellation called Corvus, the crow, which is very near the constellation of Virgo and Libra. So Maat used an ostrich feather in the legend to weigh the heart, to see if the heart could pass the test and the initiation, and to see if the heart was as light as a feather. This is where I've had my own insight. I'm an avid stargazer, and I like to get a lot of my information about the stars from the stars, sitting underneath them. So I had an epiphany, a message, as I was connecting with the energies of Spica. So I was very, very excited that Maat held a feather. And I love crows. Crows are my creature. I would be a crow if I could. So the constellation of Corvus is very, very important to me. And it thrilled me to think that perhaps, if the star Spica could be a feather held by Maat, perhaps it was a crow feather. And then that's where I got my realization. I actually heard it. So when we hear the story of the heart being weighed after death, we think about that weight being heavy, that it's accumulated sin or karma or something. But there's a heaviness, like a physical heaviness to the heart and the soul that we are judged by. And then I heard a little voice say to me that we have the story wrong, that our hearts indeed are weighed after death, but it is not heaviness that we are compared to, it's light. Our hearts need to be as light as a feather. And perhaps, since Virgo holds a feather to symbolize, to weigh us, which could be the star Spica. So to me, this was probably the most profound spiritual message I've ever had in my life. That we are not judged by the heaviness of our wrongdoing in life, the heaviness of our sins, the weight of our actions, but we are judged by the lightness, the lightness of light that is in our heart, that we have the seed of a star in our hearts, and that is where we are judged and how we are judged. So to me, that is what Spica represents, is as a reminder to keep your heart light, and to keep the light of a star, the light of the divine in your heart. And then that is what you're judged on when you pass this life and this physical embodiment. so all of this to say that this Venus retrograde was absolutely connected to the star Spica. Now, the retrograde didn't actually conjunct with Spica. She met Spica before the retrograde, and then the shadow of the retrograde was the 25th, 0.15 degrees of Libra. So this is the point that Venus traveled through to Scorpio, to the 10th degree of Scorpio, and then back to the 25th degree of Libra. So, okay. so she entered her shadow on September 2nd, 2018, and the sun was in early degrees of Virgo. So we have the stage set here in the early degrees of Virgo with these retrogrades of Venus and Mars as a place to return, a place that is waiting for activations. So it's really interesting to me that in Venus's retrograde last year, she moved from the sign of Libra, which she rules, to the sign of Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars. To me, this almost feels like an energetic visitation between the two, and a lesson learned between the two. That some information of this divine masculine embodied by Mars, that Venus needed to visit his domain and bring it back to Libra in the retrograde, among many other things. So it is important that I speak of the sign Scorpio, because this retrograde of Venus was from Libra to Scorpio. Now, all signs can be many things. They can be many things personally and collectively. But one aspect that I look at Scorpio as is that it is a sign of initiation. Scorpio is a sign, fixed water, deep, still water, deep emotions, deep connections. And Scorpio is a place that has also been associated with death. Now, death can be the death of ego and the death of identity in some ways. And I feel like Scorpio is a sign where you can be initiated to a new state of being. So Venus's retrograde in Scorpio I feel like was an initiation for the divine feminine, for the sacred feminine. It was a visit to lose an identity and an ego. Now, it's very interesting. Venus's retrograde went through a part of the sky that was called by traditional astrology the Via Combusto, and that means the burning way. It is a part of the sky that is considered to be very challenging. One reason for that is it is opposite in the sky from the place where the moon is exalted in Taurus and the sun is exalted in Aries. So it's considered to be a place of challenge and burning, to burn away, to once again, to burn away what's not needed to be initiated. It's also interesting, there is a man named Randall Carlson. And if you're not aware of Randall Carlson, it's worth looking into. He is a geologist and he's also a sacred geometrician. And so he has a theory, and I think he may be right, that the Via Combusto is a part of the sky where once we had a meteor enter our sky and hit the earth and have enormous devastation. And so we carry some kind of energetic memory, some resonance with this disaster that shifted the course of humanity. And it does make sense. This comet was a comet called Phaeton, and the Geminid meteor showers, which now we can view in December, would have been the remainder of that comet. And when the comet would have hit, it would have been, because of precession of the equinoxes, it would have been at this time of year coming through this part of the sky. It's interesting that the Via Combusto may also have some resonance with ancient trauma. so, so Venus went through this part of the sky in her retrograde, and she was also born in as a morning star in the retrograde as well. So yes, so this retrograde was very, very significant. So when you go through an initiation, it is a regeneration, and so yes, the time that she spent going from Libra to Scorpio and back again, going from evening star to morning star and making a Venus star point there, it was a new and enlightened Venus, a new reborn Venus.